So we're going to continue adding information to this detail because obviously it's not complete at this point. We're going to add some corrugated wall ties to the brick veneer and put some framing in here for the fasteners to actually attach to. And this is pretty typical, right? As you develop a detail, you add more and more layers of information to it. The idea being is you're giving the contractor a set of instructions on how to actually assemble the building. So you should be in this view, which is the roof taper section. We're going to go to the Insert tab and click on the Load Family button. The book asks us to navigate to the Detail Items folder, Division 6 Wood and Plastics, 061100 Wood Framing. Detail Items, Division 6, Wood Framing. And we're going to open up the Nominal Cut Lumber section, which is basically going to give us a rectangle with an X in it. Alright, and then it's going to ask us to load the size that we want to use. And we want to use a 2x6. Cancel for 1 second. I think I loaded the wrong family. Detail items. 6. Wood framing. I loaded rough cut. I want to go to nominal cut. I knew I had loaded the wrong one because when I went over here to 2x6, it said 6 inches by 2 inches, which a typical piece of lumber is not 6 inches by 2 inches. It is 1.5 inches by 5.5 inches. So make sure you got the right family open, nominal cut lumber. And we will insert that. Select the Annotate tab, click the Component Detail Components button. So if we go to Annotate, Component, Detail Component, and it should have the last thing that we loaded. And we want to add that blocking in this general area right here. Press Escape twice. That's just going to clear us out of the command. Select the blocking you just added and right click on it. Select Override Graphics and View by Element. In the projection line category, change the weight to 2. Let's try that one more time. There we go. We're changing it from object style, what is the object style defined by? The parameters of the family, right? We fixed that with the angle iron on Thursday. This is a way to override just that one element by saying don't give me the object styles, but give me a line weight too. Okay, and what did that do? Made those lines narrow. Your blocking should look like figure 11.37, and it certainly does. The next step is to add the corrugated wall tile, but before we do that, you want to be really precise about how you do this, and gaps like that will come to kill you eventually. So we're going to take a little bit of time and just make sure that we move this to where it would actually sit. And if we want it aligned with that, then we're going to want to make sure that those two things are aligned, and they are. So if you're drawing a detail, you want to be very careful about how you're drawing it. Really, you want to be very careful about how you're drawing anything, but especially details, because those little mistakes, when you print them at a large scale, they'll actually show up. Alright, the next step is to add the corrugated wall tie. You'll do this in the same manner except that it's located in a different directory. On the Insert tab, click the Load Family button. So we'll go back to Insert, Load Family. And this should be coming standard to you at this point, right? If we need to go get something that's not already in our project, most likely we're going to load a family to do that. We're going to go to Masonry. Detail Items, Masonry. Select 04 or 0500 common work resulting from masonry. And 040519 masonry, anchorage, and reinforcing. Select the file called corrugated wall tie section. Next thing we're going to do is use the detail component button to place the wall tie in your model shown in figure 11.38. All right. Now, what are corrugated wall ties actually used for?
Aren't they to give masonry strength when...
Yeah, it's actually to attach this wall back to the structural wall. So this is a masonry veneer. It only supports its own weight. I'm not going to talk about the accuracy of the actual detail because I don't think this is the proper way to actually tie this wall back. There's other ways to do it. I wouldn't detail it this way. That's not the point of what we're doing in Revit right now. The point of what we're doing in Revit right now is finding these components, inserting them, building a detail. You have to rely on the architect or project manager in your office to help you I don't want to say modify, to help you establish the detail, to help you put together the detail in a way that makes sense and is constructible. It's not just simply clicking and dragging stuff in. There needs to be a logic for how this is done. I've detailed a lot of masonry veneer walls, and I've never detailed it quite this way. But again, that's not necessarily what the... remember, we're here learning Revit, not necessarily learning how to detail. There's lots of books that can help you learn how things should be detailed, as well as just experience talking to contractors, talking to architects, things of that nature. Yeah. All right. Press Escape twice, which we have. Now you'll add some blocking along the concrete parapet cap. You also need additional blocking along the lag bolts. If you'd like, go ahead and copy the 2x6 blocking around the model to mimic the figure at the end of this series of steps. Or you can follow these steps. We're going to take and since we've already got the graphics the way we want on this one, we're going to copy that. We can say, hey, we want to copy multiple. We're still going to have to adjust these graphics. Rotate that 90 degrees. I really like the Align tool, if you haven't noticed. I just think it helps get you an accurate drawing quickly. You obviously could be using a variety of tools to get here, right? It looks like we got something on top of it itself here, so let's delete one. Just a graphic thing. Okay. So I'm going to select all of these, holding Control to make my selection multiple. Okay. Now, does this look right? Well, there's a couple things I can do. I could either make this transparent, right, by going into the object styles, editing the type, or I can simply take these and do what? Send them to the back. And then that looks more appropriate, right? Does that look like pretty close to figure 11.40? I understand we have 2 bolts as opposed to 1 bolt,
Yeah.
but the reality is 2 bolts would actually be a better solution here as opposed to 1 bolt. Any questions about that? All right. On to the next item. When you're drafting over a true section of your model, it's always good to try to use as much of the graphic information from the actual model as possible. For example, the 3/4 inch void you see the bolt going through is actually 3/4 inch plywood sheathing. For some reason, the default plywood material has its cut pattern set to none. Let's fix this. So we're going to add some more information here. We're going to select this wall. We'll go into Edit Type. We're going to go into the Structures row. And you guys should be kind of familiar with this at this point, right? We're going to go into the Plywood Sheathing. Click on that button. It's going to bring us into basically the material editor for that plywood. And we can go to the cut pattern. And we're going to change that cut pattern from none to plywood. And hit OK. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back in there. Okay. If we double click on the plywood hatch pattern, we actually open up the modify properties dialog of that hatch pattern. We want to select align with the element, so it doesn't try to align it to the view, but it aligns it to the actual element, which means it'll be parallel to the piece of plywood. And now we want to click OK a couple times. It should take us all the way back. It looks like Revit's slowing down here a little bit. Okay. And now we have additional information in here, right? That hatch pattern has filled in where that plywood's at. So somebody reading this detail can, it's not just 2 lines anymore, it actually means something. There would be a graphic legend on the front of your drawings that would say, hey, this pattern represents plywood. Now that you have a good grasp of adding detail components, you need to learn how to control the line weight so the outlines of the brick looks a little bolder. If you remember, some of the detail components were modified based on the line weight of the filled region perimeter. This thickness was changed from heavy lines to detail items. You need to set detail items to a thickness you can live with. On the Manage tab, click the Object Styles button. We go to Manage. This little, looks like 4 little boxes with a paintbrush. That's your Object Styles. Scroll down the list until you see Detail Items. That's right here. Change the projected line weight to 2 as shown in figure 11.4. So instead of 1, we're going to change that to 2. You can either type in 2 or do it during the drop down. Hit OK. And what should that do to those lines? You made them a little thicker, right? So the higher the number, the thicker the line when you're talking about line weights. The lower the number, the thinner the line. Alright, next item. Another item left to explore in terms of adding detail to a view is the simple concept of drawing lines. Drawing detail lines. As I mentioned in Revit, you can simply draw lines. You can get only so far with detail components, and then you need to pick up the pencil and add your lines. The next set of procedures will focus on adding lines to your view. Then we'll look deeper into how these lines are created and modified. In the project browser, make sure you're in Sections, Building Section, Roof Tapers section. We are. You can verify that by looking at the project browser. On the Detail panel of the Annotate tab, click the Detail Line button. It's right here. You can also type DL, and you're going to want to get familiar with DL just because it makes it quicker to invoke this particular command. On the options bar, deselect the chain option. So that means when we click, we're only going to draw one line. Item 5. Draw a line as shown in figure 11.44. Be sure your endpoint and perpendicular. Be sure to use your endpoint and perpendicular snaps. Alright, so we drew that line at the bottom of the blocking. With the line command still running, click the Pick Lines icon on the draw panel. I didn't leave it running, but you can type DL or click on that icon. Change the offset to 1.5 inches. With the line command still running, change to thin lines in the line styles. We're already at thin lines. Item 10, in the draw panel, click the line. Well, I must have missed something here. Oh, item 8, sorry. Offset the line you just drew down 1.5 inches. Okay. And really, what we're going to do is these lines should be a little bit bolder. So we're going to take them from thin lines to medium lines. All right, and then we're going to type DL. And we're going to draw the X for this piece of blocking. Now you may say, hey, we just inserted this 2x6. Well, this dimension here is not a regular dimension. They would actually have to take the piece of lumber and cut it to the right width. So you're not going to find a decal component that just fits in here. You may have to draw it out. But you can simply do that with lines. So now your drawing should look something similar to figure 11.46. Copy the blocking down for a double plate. Draw another X below the plate that indicates a stud. So in that particular case, we could, I believe what they're asking us to do is copy some of this information. So we end up with something like that. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's that much wood there. Nobody's ever going to frame it that way. They would buy one big piece of wood that fit that whole size. It's just the way they would do it. So it's easy to draw a detail that doesn't necessarily work, and I want you to think about that as you're drawing details. Can it actually physically be put together this way, or is this the most efficient way to put it together? Because believe me, you draw a detail like this and send it out to the field, what's the contractor going to do?
Ignore it, put a big piece of wood.
Well, they may ignore it, but before they ignore it, they'll probably laugh at you. Correct, Mr. Contractor? I'll send you an RFI. All right. So what makes a medium line medium and thin line thin? This is part of Revit over which you need to have full control. After all, your biggest challenge will be getting your plotted sheet to match your old CAD plotted sheets. Specifying line weight is crucial. Specifying drafting line weights. In CAD, you wouldn't dare to draw even a single line if you didn't know the proper layer on which it was being drafted. Why should Revit be any different? The objective of the next procedure is to investigate where the line weights are stored and how they relate to the lines you're drawing. On the Manage tab, choose Additional Settings Line Styles. In the Line Styles dialog box, expand the Lines category by clicking the plus sign next to the line. Some of the line styles were generated in AutoCAD. Click into the Wide Lines category and change the value from 5 to 4, shown in figure 11.4. So these are the different types of lines. And this is your weight of that line. This is a global change. So if we change wide lines here in our line styles, it will change every wide line in the entire project. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a good way to control things globally. Just realize you're changing them here globally. When we change them by element, where were we changing them? Just by that one element, right? We were saying make it a 2, make it a 1, make it same thing here. Make it a 1, make it a 6. So we're going to take all the wide lines and make them a little bit thinner throughout the entire project by doing this. Click OK. Wide lines in all project views will now show the new line weight. And you probably didn't even notice it shrink those lines down a little bit, but it did. The next item to tackle is the fact that this detail looks naked without any text or dimensions added to it. Although you've applied both of these in past chapters, you need to use them because they're relevant to detailing. Adding notes. In Revit, adding notes to a section can take on a whole different meaning than in CAD. Or if you want, adding notes to a detail can be exactly as it was back in CAD. Sometimes sticking to the tried and true methods isn't such a bad thing. The goal of the next set of procedures is to add notes by simply lettering in some text, adding textual notations. We're duplicating efforts with the text to drive home the fact that Revit lets you add text regardless of the view and also regardless of the scale. Text in a plan is the same as text in a detail, and you'll prove it in the next procedure. On the Annotate tab, click the text button. We'll go back to Annotate, Text. We've used this tool in the past, so this should be really a review for you guys. Alright. In the next 3 steps, use the Format panel of the Modify Place Text tab. Click the Align Right button. So we are going to align right. Again, on the Modify Place Text tab, click the 2-segment leader, uppercase A, in the lower left corner of the Format panel. Okay. Also on the Format panel, click the leader at top right button. Okay. In the section, pick the first point of the leader at the top of the brick tie detail shown in figure 11.48. And we're going to call this corrugated brick tie on 2x6 blocking. Make sure you have cap locks on. Click off the text in another part of the model and your text justifies to the leader. Yep, and that makes a huge amount of text, right? You can change that and bring it in by doing something like that. But you can tell if we called out every single piece that way, how much text would we have on this detail? A lot of text. This is a preference thing. It will depend on the firm that you work at. I don't like having a whole lot of text on my details like this. I prefer to use keyed notes, where there's a note over here, typically in ConDoc CSI specification, and then that goes to a legend that tells you more stuff in detail. But it depends on the firm you work for. All right. These steps are the most common procedure for adding detail to a model. In other words, take what you can from the model, then add line work and detail components to the view. However, eventually you'll find yourself in a situation where you would rather draft your detail from scratch. You can do this as well, as you'll see in the next section. So sometimes you're going to add information. We added information to the existing wall section, right? Sometimes you just need a standard detail that's all lines. It doesn't have anything to do with the model, except it's referenced in the model, but it's really all lines. Over the years, Revit has been labeled as a poor drafting application. This is unfortunate because it can be a good drafting application when given the chance. The only challenge is to figure out where to start. The objective of the next procedure is to create a blank view and then simply learn how to draw lines. On the View tab, click the Drafting View button as shown in figure 11.50. Oh, they have moved the drafting view. There we go. Drafting view. It's a little icon. In the new drafting view dialog box, name the new view typical wall termination. Change the scale to 3/4 of an inch equals a foot. Click OK. It's opened up an entire new view, and if you look over here in the properties, you'll see drafting view detail. This is not linked to the model, meaning I can draw anything I want here, and it's only going to show up in this view. Now I can reference this view from the model, and we'll show you how to do that. But this is a really powerful tool for things like typical wall top termination. That's a detail you're going to draw once, and you're going to want to use multiple times from project to project. You're now on a completely blank canvas. Anything you draw here is truly drafting, and it isn't tied back to the model at all. The objective of the next procedure is to start adding lines and more detailed components. The item you'll draft is a detail showing a flexible top of track metal stud partition. On the Annotate tab, click the Detail Line button, or type DL. In the Properties dialog box, click Medium Lines. Draw a horizontal line about 4 foot 7 inches long as shown in figure 11.52. With the detail line command still running, change the offset in the options bar to 8 inches. Using the 2 endpoints of the first line, draw another line below. Item 6. On the Draw panel, click the Pick Lines icon. Item 7. Again on the options bar, change the offset to 1.5 inches. Offset the bottom line down 1.5 inches from the detail. Offset the bottom line. Alright, we'll do that. Your detail should look something like figure 11.53. With detail line command still running, click the line button and set the offset value to 3 inches. On the options bar, make sure the chain option is deselected. It is. For the first point of the line, pick the midpoint of the bottom line as shown in figure 11.54. I put an SM up here. I didn't want to do that. Alright, we're going to draw that down for approximately 1 foot 9 inches. And I could drag this out, or I could just type 1 foot 9, which would be easier. By offsetting 3 inches, you can draw 2 lines using a common center line. I don't know if that's the fastest way to draw a 6-inch stud, but it works. Item 14. Move your cursor down in the view, but this time tap the spacebar to flip the line the other direction. We've already done that. Draw another line of the same length again. We did that. Click Modify. Compare your lines with the lines in figure 11.50. 18. Click the Trim Extended Corner button on the Modify tab as shown in figure 11.56. Or type TR. I'm going to type TR. And we're just going to take this and click on the pieces that you want to keep. And we should have something that looks similar to this. The next step is to add the track to the bottom of the floor. You'll do this by creating 3 wide lines. The trick is to do a good amount of offsetting. If you want to explore and try the procedure on your own, look ahead to figure 11.57. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at 11.57 and go, okay. Looks like they offset 3/8 of an inch. And basically they're creating a slip track here. So we're going to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm I'm going to come in. We're not going to look at their instructions. I'm going to type DL for line. I'm going to say I want to make a wide line. I'm going to say I want to offset it 0.375 or 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to click here. I'm going to hit tab. And I'm going to draw that down. 1.5 inches. You might ask, why 1.5 inches? Because that tells me it's 3 inches long. And the dimensions in the figure 11.59. And I know I'm already an inch and a half down. And then I'm going to come here to extend. And then I'll type DL again. Kind of just draw that out. Take this. Mirror it. TR to clean that up. Alright. And what you may want to do is offset this if you wanted it to read differently. Alright, so now I have a separation there and I have a track, right? That's how we used to draw it in CAD, line by line, by line by line. So you can do it, and as you use the tools more and more often, you'll get faster. Alright. It's time to add gypsum board to both sides of the wall. By using the same method as you did before, you'll use thin lines to denote 2 layers of 5/8 inch gypsum board on both sides of the stud. If you're ready to complete the task on your own, go ahead. Alright, so let's just try that. And the reality, I don't know if that's the best way to draw it, but that's actually all sorts of incorrect. The detail in the book shows the gypsum board on the inside. It really should be on the outside. There should be the contractor's shaking his head in the back. So let's draw the detail the proper way, even though the book doesn't look this way. This would be a metal stud and this would be a metal track. It would be in place before you put the gypsum board up. So we're going to go ahead and offset, cancel, DL. I'm going to draw one side with lines and I'm going to draw the other side a little bit different. Thin lines. Offset 0.625 of an inch or 5/8. Pick line. 1, 2. Now you may be thinking, obviously this doesn't work. Yeah, you could take these lines. Oh, I didn't want all that. You can take these lines and drag them down. Because really the way this works is you frame the drywall, or you put the drywall up to just below that track. And if this is a fire rated partition, another piece of drywall is put on the outside of that track so that it can still slip. Does that make sense? Because the floor above actually deflects. That's why this detail is made the way it is. So that's one way to add the gypsum board by doing an offset. You can also go to Division 9, plaster and gypsum board, gypsum board wall section. Go back to annotate, component. We don't want 3/4 inch. we want 5/8, and we can say we want 5/8 type X. And then we can draw that component. And we can actually copy that. So which way is more correct? Lines or drawing it with the component?
Component's better.
It's really kind of up to you. I think the component is a little bit easier when you get used to using it. And the reason I say that is it's all there, right? It's all together. I'm just using the align command right now to align these things. Then I'm just going to delete that line. This already has a hatch pattern on it. It has all those things. Now it needs some line weight work. Would you agree? But we can just select these things and say, hey, override that graphic by element, projection lines. I don't want the object style. I want a number 2. Okay, apply. Maybe that's still too dark, so we can come in and do that again. And say I want it to be a 1. Now this looks more complete, in my opinion. And really, if you look at it, it's showing the paper face.
Yeah, it does.
And you can just go to course, and that should fix that. No, it's not going to fix it. So if you're like, hey, I really don't like that shows the paper face, I could go in and I could open this. And I could start changing all these things in the actual family, right? I can go into the type properties. Cancel. Search properties. No, I don't want to change that. But I could get into all of this information just like we did on the other stuff, right?
But if you're doing it in the family, it's global, so you.
This would change it everywhere.
So you'd have to do duplicate then, right?
No?
No?
It depends on how you want it to show up. The idea that I want to get across to you on that particular item is no. Even if you choose theirs, you still have a great amount of flexibility over how to adjust it, even if you went into the family. Now, this may take a little bit more work the first time, but this takes the same amount of work every single time. So once you get this set up, it just goes faster. So my philosophy is take the time to invest in making this right the first time, and then your drawings will look the way you want forever. And if we zoom in further and further, it's kind of nice to have that double line, but it's probably not necessary. So we could fix that if we so wanted to. Okay. Again, we drew it a little differently than what's in the book. Now the last thing they did is they added a little hatch region. So let's do that. Let's do it without following them step by step. We want to add a little region up here with some hatch in it. We would go to annotate, and we know that we want a region. Filled region, diagonal crosshatch, okay. Chain. Alright. Okay, is that the hatch we want? No. So we'll select that, and we'll go in here to edit type. And we can duplicate this and just call it a diagonal hatch. Go into the fill pattern. Okay. Does that look more like the book?
Yep.
Okay. Next item. Creating a detail group. Groups can be extremely advantageous to the drafting process. Although I mentioned earlier the details and drawing views aren't linked to the model, you can still provide some global control within the details themselves by creating a group. This will give you further control over every instance of this specific detail in the entire world in the entire model. The objective of the following procedure is to create a new group and add it to another view. Select everything in the view by picking a window. In the Create Detail Group dialog, call the new group Typical Slip Track. Oh, sorry. On the Modify Multi-Select tab in the Create panel, click the Create Group button. That's the only thing that's highlighted there. And we want to call this group Typical Slip Track. The group has been created. You see an icon similar to the UCS icon in AutoCAD. That's this little thing right here. UCS means User Coordinate System. This is your origin. Pick the middle grip and drag it to the left corner of the track where it meets the floor. Alright, so we want to take that and we want to really put it right there. So when we insert this group, that's the place that it will insert from. Alright. Save the model. Oh, I didn't really want to do that, but that's okay. Save the model. With the group created, let's add it to another view. Because not every view shows the same thing, you can alter the group's instance to conform to the detail into which it's being placed. The objective of the next procedure is to add the new detail group physically to the roof taper section. In the project browser, find the building section called Roof Taper Section and open it. On the Annotate tab, click the Detail Group, Place Detail Group. Move your cursor over the underside of the roof. You'll get a snap. This is the origin point. So we're gonna snap it right there. All right. And does it show some stuff we don't want it to show? And the answer is yes, right? It's got a bunch of stuff that interferes with our detail. But that's not a problem. We're going to fix that here. When the group is placed, press Escape. The next step is to remove some of the extraneous hatch lines. You can do this within a group, but you must be careful not to edit the group in a way that affects all other instances. Hover your cursor over the bottom line of the filled region as shown in figure 11.67. Press the Tab key. This allows you to select the filled region. Pick the region. A small blue grip icon appears. When you hover your cursor over it, it says that you can exclude this member from the group. Click icon to exclude in this group instance. We're going to do that. We're going to do the same thing. We'll click outside of that. You'll see that goes away. We also have a top line of this group, but oh no, maybe not. Yeah, there we go. That line right there is a problem, right?
Grab it all and filter.
Nope, you got to do it individually like that. So I was able to take pieces and parts of that group out, and I didn't have to redraw all this information. So you can set up things and build them by pieces very quickly if you have all your pieces kind of in order. Your detail should now look like figure 11.68. And for the most part it does. We have the chipboard drawn a little bit differently, but that'll be okay. Now you'll open the original group and make modifications to see how each insertion of a group is influenced. This is where the advantage of using a group in a model comes into play. When the modifications are completed, the other groups will be updated. In the project browser, find the typical wall termination view under drafting views. So when we go up here, we got all sorts of views. Let's collapse some of these. Detail views, detail. Why is it not showing up? Where is it at? Sometimes your project browser here can get very cluttered. There we go. Detail views. No, drafting views. I'm looking for drafting views. Alright, so if you're having difficulty finding your drafting views, it may be that your views are set to discipline and you need to go under coordination views. I'll show you how to change that. You can go here to browser organization and say, I want all my views, and apply, and then it will just show up here as drafting views, detail, typical wall termination. So now we're back where the book has asked us to go. Drag the project browser over here so we have some more screen real estate. Alright, so back to the book.
Are you setting it to discipline?
In the project browser, no, I took it from discipline to all. Mine was set to discipline for some reason. In the project browser, find the typical wall termination view under drafting views. We've done that. Select the group. On the Modify Details Group tab, click Edit Group. And now you're kind of in a sketch mode. You can see your screen went like trace paper yellow. On the Details panel of the Annotate tab, click the Installation button and shown in figure 11.69. Place the installation starting at the midpoint of the top of the stud and terminate the installation at the bottom of the stud as shown in figure 11.70. You're lucky the width fits perfectly. If it didn't, you could change the width in the options bar. It doesn't fit perfectly for us because we put our chipboard on the outside. We can change this width to 5.5 inches and redraw it. You could also change the installation width here and not have to redraw it. So Revit created this whole insulation tool just to be able to draw insulation. On AutoCAD, we used to have a little block that we'd copy and paste and cut, and it was always a mess. Now we're going to finish. And what you're going to notice is if we go back into the building sections, roof taper section, that insulation showed up because we edited the actual group. So it's a way, groups are a way to add a lot of information very quickly across multiple areas. All right, let's continue forward. Adding a section to another view. You already know how to add a section marker in Plan. What you may not know is how to tell Revit that you would rather specify the reference. In this procedure, you'll go to Level 1, Ceiling Plan, and add a section pointing to your drafting view. In the project browser, open the Level 1 Floor Plan. Interesting, I think we have a typo there. Okay. Floor plans, level 1. Zoom in on the area of the east wing shown in figure 11.72. On the View tab, click the Section button, pick Detail in the Type selector. So you come down here, and basically you tell it you want to reference a detail view. No, that's wrong. On the View tab, click the Section button, pick Detail in the Type selector. Yeah, okay. That's not the way I want to do this. Okay. Before you place the section, click the Reference Other View button on the options bar. It's not really there, it's here. Reference Other View. And this is going to give you the ability to reference it to a different, so we can click Drafting View, Typical Wall Termination. And you can draw that there. By default, when you do that, it's going to say Sim. And it hasn't populated these because we haven't placed that detail view on a sheet. But if I double click on this, it brings up that view. So it's smart in that regard, right? When I drop this detail on a sheet, that reference will fill in just like it was any other view. So Revit's giving you the option to reference detail views or a view of the exact model. It's actually a very powerful tool. It keeps a lot of coordination issues from happening. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's very nice that they let you do that. It really expands the use of details. And what we would typically do is want to drag that kind of right there. Yeah, once we drop that on a sheet, it'll all fill out and it'll be great. Okay, so one other way that you can do detailing. Importing AutoCAD files in the drafting view. A lot of times firms will have a whole library of AutoCAD drafting details like that typical wall that are already done. And they don't want to spend the time to recreate them in Revit. Now, what I'll tell you is slowly you want to move from those CAD generated details to Revit details. But when you're first starting to make that transition in an office, it's perfectly fine to import some details. So we're going to do that by following this step. Follow these steps. In the View tab, click the Drafting View button. Set the scale to 1.5 inches equals a foot. On the Insert tab, hit OK. And then we're going to go to the Insert tab, and they have an Import CAD button. Now, if you downloaded the data sets, there should be. That's disappointing. There's supposed to be a base cabinet drawing.dwg. They're being a liar to us. Let's extract it all here and see if I didn't. Okay. Well, that's no fun. So let's go find a CAD file real quick so I can show you how to do this. I'll come back to that. You guys won't be doing it for your final project, so I'll come back to that and move on to the next item. And that's not really germane either. Okay, the last couple items in Chapter 11, you guys can go over at your leisure. You probably won't be using them for your final project. Well, let's get into something you will be using for your final project that a lot of questions have been asked about, and that is curtain walls. So I'm going to get out of Revit here for a minute and go download I believe it's chapter 2, the bonus chapter 2, that goes over curtain walls. So if we go to the Cybex website, we have these bonus chapters that you can download. I believe it's chapter 2. No, it's creating families. Okay, maybe it's chapter 3. Site and topography.
Chapter 3.
No, maybe it's chapter 1. Maybe they moved it up to chapter 1. Advanced wall topics. Alright, strike 3. Oh, actually, it might be in advanced wall topics now. Thought they used to have their own chapter, but rendering and presentation. Chapter 5. Your physical book used to be about 23 chapters. So they took some of the chapters that they don't put in the physical book any longer and gave them to you as bonus chapters. They've renumbered them here lately. Schedules and tags.
It's not 6.
Alright. It's got to be... They must have integrated it into advanced wall topics. Alright. Yeah, right here. Creating a curtain wall. Used to be its own chapter.
What chapter is it?
Chapter 1.
Oh, fiddlesticks.
So, there's some information in here about how to create a curtain wall. I'm not going to walk you through that information. I'm just going to walk you through the basics here of how to create a curtain wall. If you need some additional help, this chapter will assist you in that. Curtain walls are actually pretty simple. It will walk you through how to create this curved curtain wall. Curtain walls are their own type of wall. So if we go to level 1, doesn't really matter, any file. We said, hey, we want to add a curtain wall into a project. The simplest thing we could do is say, okay, go to architecture, wall, and draw a curtain wall. It's a type of wall. Let's just draw a storefront. And it's going to work just like a wall. I'm going to draw this across. It's going to have some mullions in it. And basically, curtain walls are made up of 3 things. They're made up of a wall, a grid, and mullions. You got to have a grid to put a mullion in. The stuff that happens in between the grids is called panels. You control the spacing of these grids kind of the same way that you control treads in risers and stairs. So if I click on this, it has a type. And if I go in to edit that type, you're going to see that it has a vertical grid layout and a horizontal grid layout. And this says that the vertical grid layout should have a maximum, be on a rule of maximum spacing, 5 feet. That means that it's going to make equal spaces up to 5 feet. Horizontal grid, fixed distance. That means that I'm going to have a horizontal grid at every 8 feet. I'm going to have a horizontal. So if I hit cancel real quick, and I go put an elevation in, I go look at this elevation. I know this wall's 20 feet because when I click on it, it tells me it has an unconnected height of 20 feet. If I tell this wall to connect to level 2 at the top, just like any other wall, it's still going to have a fixed mullion at 8 feet because that's the rule of that particular wall. You may say, well, I need a lot more flexibility than that. That doesn't work for me. you can come in here and edit this. So if you hit the tab key, you'll see that I can select different parts of it. Right? I can select the mullion. And you can see I have a mullion selected now because it says curtain wall mullion. And I can make that continuous or break it at a joint. I can select that grid line, which you know I have it now because it says curtain wall grid. And I can add or remove a segment from that grid line. I can also go into architecture and go to curtain grid and add another grid. And because this says all segments right now, it will add a curtain wall to all those, or a grid to all those segments. I can come in there, I can modify just that one and say, hey, I don't want that mullion there. So I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to hit delete, and what's going to happen? Nothing. Because what I really need to do is I need to go in and I need to add that grid, and I need to add or remove a segment. And I want to remove that segment. And I'm going to do it down here too. If I can't get that grid line up. And you end up using your tab key a lot when you're dealing with curtain walls. Yeah, come on. Give me that segment. I gotta select the grid to remove the segment. Alright. You guys can play with that, adding and removing grids. Pretty straightforward. The simplest thing to do and the hardest thing to do, all wrapped up in one with a curtain wall, is... Anybody want to guess?
Doors.
Adding a door.
Sliding doors.
So, there's a couple of ways to do this. Curtain walls are made of panels. So you can see when I click on this, it says it's a system panel. I can technically only add a door to a curtain wall by changing the panel. You know, I click on this panel and I come in here, and in storefronts it really isn't going to give me a whole lot of options. So I'm going to draw a curtain wall here real quick. Let's go back to floor 1. Just draw a regular curtain wall. Oh, well, that's why it wasn't letting me do what I wanted to do. Let's go back and see if I can. Ooh, undo that.
Are you just gonna put a regular door in or a sliding door?
Well, I'm going to put a regular door in first, and then I'm going to show you how to put a sliding door in. There's a workaround. First, let's just draw a curtain, a regular curtain wall. Wall. I'm just going to say I want exterior glazing. I'm going to draw a line. I'm drawing it in front of my other wall, because I'm going to delete this. Alright, when I go here, all this is right now is grids. There's no mullions. If I go and I say shade this, it's just going to look like one big piece of glass basically with a bunch of lines in it. So the first thing you want to do is set up your grids properly and get them spaced. You can move these grids. For example, I can tell them make that 10 feet. Well, maybe. First I have to unlock it or unpin it. I can move that grid. I can move this grid. Say I don't want 12 inches, I want 2 feet. Again, I have to unpin it. You can say, hey, I want this to be a door right here, and I want there to be another mullion here. So I can say, go back to architecture, curtain grid. And here's the thing. You're going to come in here and go, why isn't it letting me add a grid? Go over to the edge. Let's say you want this grid at 3 foot. Okay. You can go over here and you can add just one segment. You can also come in here and say, hey, I want to remove a segment. Well, I had it removed and then I added it back. I want to remove that segment because I'm going to make this panel a door. Then when I have all these things in, I can say, hey, I want to put mullions in. And I do that by clicking on grid lines. Or I can click on a grid line segment. So for example, I don't want a mullion down here at the bottom of this door. I can go to grid line segment and click on there. I only want to put one there and one there and one there. And I want this grid line. So, all right. So now the things that are in between grid lines are what? Panels. So I sit here and hit tab. That's a panel. Right now it says it's the system panel glazed. I can put anything in that panel I really want to. I can put a wall, or I can put a door. Now what you're going to find is right now you don't have any doors loaded for curtain walls. We're going to hit escape. We're going to go to insert, load family, curtain wall panels, go to doors. Doors, door curtain wall double glass, door curtain wall double storefront. So we're going to do a double glass. We're going to hit open. Now I don't insert this like a standard door. Select that panel and I change the panel. Okay. And you might be saying, well, but hold on. I need a sliding door. Here's what I'm going to tell you about a sliding door. You could go in and create your own family in a panel and make a sliding door. You don't have time to do that. So we have a workaround. Make your panel exactly the size you want it to be for the door. And I told you, you could make these panels almost anything. Take this panel, insert a regular wall. Right? Because what can we put in regular walls? I don't know if I have a pocket door here, but I have enough room. I can insert a door in that wall. Now obviously this looks a little funny, right? But if we go and say, hey, I want to search for a sliding door, sliding door. Sorry, I wanted to go to insert. There's all sorts of sliding doors. I'm going to find the one that looks closest to what I want to actually do. Then I'm going to download that. It's going to ask me to log in. I'm going to log in with my password. Oh, that's right. I logged in with Google last time. Keep forgetting I use Google now to log into this. I'm going to save that somewhere that I know I can find it. Evidently it's going to take a few minutes to download. Hopefully not 4 minutes and 13 seconds. Okay, now that it's downloaded, you're going to want to hit open, upgrade the model. That will take a moment. And let's just go into 3D so we can look at this door. Looks good. That door gets inserted to a typical wall. So we're going to load this into our project. I'm going to insert that in that wall. But I'm inserting it in the wall. I'm not actually inserting it into the storefront. Does that make sense? So the key to making this look good is making sure that your panel size matches the size of your door. Does that make sense? So I'm inserting this door into this panel. I turned that panel from a piece of glass into a wall. I am not inserting the door into the storefront system.
Can you say that again?
I'm inserting the door into the panel, which I turned into a wall. I'm not inserting the door into the curtain wall, because the curtain wall won't accept it. But if you make this panel exactly the size that you need to, so if I came in here and said, okay, I'm gonna edit this, and I'm gonna basically use a line to align that and that. Hopefully I don't crash Revit asking it to do this. Enjoying the elements. Okay, let's take this off shaded. That's part of the problem. It doesn't want to align that. Yes. Align this to that. There you go. And I took this and said align this. Now let's get it selected first so they know that's what I want to work with. Come on. Give me the grid. Oh, it's pinned. That's why it won't let me do it. Something else you got to remember. By default, all your grid lines are pinned. So let's unpin them. And then we align all this stuff. So that looks correct. Would you agree? That's a workaround for you to be able to put a sliding door inside a curtain wall. The other way to do it is build your actual family. We don't have enough time to go over that between now and the end of the semester, but that gives you a workaround. And a lot of times you got to realize with Revit, it's about a workaround. Not everything is going to be perfect. They haven't anticipated every possible building connection you could possibly come up with. So sometimes you use a workaround. So hopefully that will help you guys move forward in completing your case study houses. Curtain walls just take a while to get used to, work with, so definitely make sure you work with them before Thursday, and if you have questions, bring them in and we'll go over those questions in class.